mic is muted? Is it? Can you? Okay, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 18 of For No Particular Reason. I'm Carrie Lewis, along with my amazing co-host Yanko Yankov. Both of us showing up in service to the world with the hopes that our conversations bring joy, entertainment, and insights into your lives. And I am so incredibly excited to bring on a friend of mine, John Patching, who I have personally worked with to help cultivate energy and to really clear some of my energetic blocks. So I'm going to welcome John. I'm super excited to have a conversation with John about whatever is coming up for him to share, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to you all so that you can learn a little bit more about how John shows up in service to the world. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much. What a lovely welcome, and it's nice to see you both again. And I'm on the 18th show. 1 and 8 makes 9, which is universal completion. What an amazing number to be on. Isn't that great? So I am John from the UK. Yeah, I am John from the UK, as you can see my numbers on the screen here. So I have had rather an amazing journey in my life. So I am very spiritual. I'm also a holistic therapist and counselor. I'm a healer, but also I work with a lot of businesses connecting business to business and business to clients. I've done lots of things in my life. I think about the only job I haven't done is a work in an office and doing an office job. Other than that, I've done most jobs. And so I would hope I have a whole rounded experience in life, which I draw upon my wisdom of how I've lived. So this is really what I do. I counsel people through my own experiences. I am a qualified hypnotherapist and meditation tutor and a healer. And I also work with businesses as an entrepreneur to help them develop their own personal businesses. I have a unique ability to connect people to people and to get to the root of who they are very quickly. And whether or not you want to say who you are and your own personal journey, it comes out very fast when I talk to you, which is quite funny.
You know what? I'm gonna say for the audience something I truly love about John that aligns so much with me is he does not mince words. If he sees something, feels something, you immediately call it. And whether it's me, like you're like, hey, what's up with your energy? Or whether it's calling Yanko out for his picture not aligning with his energy, you don't hold back. And that is something that resonates so deeply with me because it's kind of how I show up in the world. So thank you for trusting yourself, right? Because you said you call upon your own life experience and you're able to deeply kind of connect into the person and pull out what needs to be pulled out for healing. And I think that comes from trust, right? Relying on yourself to be able to instinctually or intuitively or spiritually tap into whatever's coming up and then say it the way it needs to be said so it can help.
Of course, but there are some times where you have to have a bit of decorum and you're not quite so blatant. But you know that from the character of the person you're talking to, whether it's going to be appropriate or not. And Kerry, we have the kind of rapport, and I'm very grateful for this, where I can just call it. And if I see something in your aura, and the same with you, Yanko, that I've recently met, and what a fantastic conversation we had, where I could see something and I knew that it was the right thing to just say it rather than mince my words. And sometimes it is better to have a straightforward relationship with somebody rather than to go round the bush. Beating around the bush can waste a lot of time. And when you have people that you do feel really spiritually connected to, they are very genuine and honest people like you are, then what's the point of going around the bush? Let's just say it. Let's just deal with it. Let's just move forward in the beautiful life that we have.
Yeah, I agree. And interestingly enough, I tell people I got you like a fish for a reason, because while you're right, there is a time and a place for decorum. The way in which I show up is there's no filter. And so I kind of want people to know that before they even reach out to me, because I'm not going to hold back. So you might as well be prepared. But we did come here to talk about me. I'm really curious. So you were talking offline about an experience that you have recently gone through and are continuing to move through. And I would love for you to kind of share whatever you're called to share with the community today.
Okay, so I was thinking for a week really about what did I want to talk about. I mean, there's a vast array of topics out there, but one of the things that I'm processing at the moment and have been for quite a while is about relationships and different forms of love within relationships. So recently, I have just proposed and had a yes, and I'm getting married on the 1st of the 1st. And of course, this brings things to you about past relationships. It makes you reflect. It makes you clean up the remainders of the dirt, shall we put it like that? And, in my life that has taken a lot of processing while I was in the relationship, and now after the relationship is my twin flame connection. And I was very honored to actually have met my twin flame and been with them for the last 10 years. So, a lot of cleaning up happens after that, but you realize that actually if I hadn't have had that twin flame connection, I would never have been ready to meet my soulmate now, who I knew was there, who I knew was coming because I have had clinicians, but I wouldn't have been ready. So tonight, if it's, well, it's my tonight, it's your afternoon, if it's okay to actually talk about the power of twin flame relationships, what they mean, what they are, and how they affected me. You're both nodding. Does that mean the stage is
No,
mine?
you know what? Here's the thing. Look, everybody already knows by episode 18, I can talk a lot, right? And John, you too. So that's why we're a perfect pairing in many ways. But I want to give Yanko the opportunity to share his thoughts.
I was gonna say I've had a connection with John, and it was beautiful. He even did some channel for me, which is wonderful. I mean, people might be aware of what channeling is or whatnot, but it really resonates with me. Sometimes a channel too, and that's something that I don't really talk about. And so in our show, I feel like everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, and we haven't had anybody talk on those topics. So I think that'll be really beneficial to some of our audience to be able to kind of get a sense of what it is and what it might feel like. Um, Again, because it's an experience, and what better way to um, have it broken down to somebody rather than somebody that went through the whole experience and can kind of share their experience with audience. And it might not be for everyone, but it, for the people that stumble upon it, nothing happens by chance. So if they stumble upon it, they're probably going to enjoy this conversation. So
Yeah, and I'll jump in real quickly and add, suspend what you think you know. And rather than come from a place of judgment, just come from a place of curiosity and see, what nuggets you take away from this, and then everything else just toss, because we all, to Yanko's point, we show up at the exact time, and we get the information that we need in each moment, whether or not we understand it at that time frame. So, John, talk to me about what a twin flame is. And the second question I have to piggyback on that is, how'd you know it was a twin flame?
Okay, so let's start with what is the difference between a twin flame and a soulmate. So there's a lot of preconception that a twin flame is your lover, your romantic other half, and you will have an amazing, intimate relationship with them. This is not so. Just because you meet your twin flame doesn't mean you're going to be romantically involved. Is your twin flame your soulmate? Absolutely not. So, what is a twin flame? Well, some people think that it's your other half of your soul, that you've literally had your soul cut in half, and this is your opposite, and you're rejoining back together. Is that a myth? Is it true? I don't know. The twin flame is basically the mirror of you, and it's the mirror of you to help you go deeper within yourself, within your higher consciousness, and develop yourself spiritually, understanding more about who you are, and in return you're reflecting back to them. So this is why perhaps they say it's a mirror of you or a splitting half of you that's rejoining. So whatever you believe, it's up to you. But really, the main point here that I'm saying is it's not your soulmate. It's something different. It's something extra, and you do not have to be romantically involved with your twin flame. How do you recognize your twin flame? What Kerry said. It's different for everyone, is what I believe. There are things on the internet that say, well, if you've had this, if you do that, then that's your twin flame. But I believe it's different for everybody. And I think the most important thing, if you're going to be in a lifetime where you meet your twin flame, is the yearning, is knowing when you come into this life, you're missing something, you're missing someone. The
Mm.
thought of, well, where are they, was so prevalent in the beginning of my life. And I can remember it from being in the pram, of coming in and going, well, where are they? Why am I on my own? And this signature is very, very strong in anybody that's going to meet their twin flame in that lifetime. We don't meet our twin flames often. We will have a connection with our twin flame right at the very start when we actually had one of our first reincarnations. And then you're not like to see your twin flame again unless you're really at the end of all your, towards the end of the lifetimes of reincarnating and reincarnating. Because the tying up of the twin flame is immersion and going beyond the physical incarnations of the body in the third dimension. So it's about developing yourself and going into the realm of enlightenment, if you want to call it that. But then, enlightenment is one of those words, isn't it? That, what is enlightenment? But that is more what I'm talking about. It's not the rhythm of the natural life, death, life, death, life, death, which is the learning process in this 3D environment. It's going on further to the realization of something more, your energy and your soul going beyond the earth and seeking something more in service in the universe.
Mm.
Does that kind of answer your question?
It does, and it leads me to a second question. It's simply because I happen to be a twin, right? Does that mean that that's my twin flame, or could it be somebody entirely different? That's one question, and then I have a follow-up to that because I find this very fascinating.
Okay, so a physical twin is highly unlikely to be your twin flame. Can happen, but it's not the normal.
Okay, and then secondly, when you say this twin flame is meant to challenge you, right, to go deeper and deeper,
Yes,
my experience in really, moving through different states of consciousness towards enlightenment for anybody out there who might, um, like be curious, is it's incredibly uncomfortable. And there's a lot of it's not, it's like dis-ease. Like it's really it feels
absolutely. I mean, it's the worst relationship I've ever had, but it's the best at the same time. No way would I like to repeat it.
yeah,
I mean, the roller coaster was incredible,
yeah,
absolutely incredible. We had some great moments, but the pain and the hurt was phenomenal on both sides. It happened in different stages because quite often as a twin, you're not exactly in sync. So one will be spiritually more adept than the other, and one will be more physically adept or psychologically adept or emotionally adept than the other. And this is what I actually found within and with my twin flame.
interesting. Now see, I would say I definitely think my twin is my twin flame, but that's a conversation for another time and another place. So go ahead, go on and kind of share, if you would be so kind. You know, you knew this person was your twin flame. How? Like, you just knew you had this longing. I understand that, but then what?
Well, if you can imagine somebody that's quite young, that's in a pram, looking to spirit in the sunshine and going, why am I here on my own? Where are they? And then, feeling incredibly lonely and feeling like they are only half a person. And that carried on for most of my life, even though I had a sister born and I was very close to my sister and it was amazing to have a sister. That it didn't fulfill that yearning. Okay. So fast forward from age 4 to age about 23. And this is the first time I met my twin, although I had no idea that I did. So I'm from the UK and I went to London. So I don't know if you know anything about Covent Garden, but Covent Garden is a place of different stalls, different shops with a balcony, and then it drops down into sort of like an alcove with some restaurants below, steps going down. And I was stood on the balcony. There was a string quartet playing just below the stairs. There was the restaurant with the seats out. And I was standing there listening to the string quartet on my own. And I loved the music. And the piece of music they played was Cannon's Pachelbel. And I never forget this piece of music. And the viola had just finished. And down comes down the steps, cascading down the steps, comes this beautiful woman, slightly older than me, dark hair, wavy, beautiful green eyes, flowing dress, and goes straight over to the viola player and starts talking. And then she glances up at me and we hit direct eye contact. And it's like one of those movie scenes, where you just instantly fall in love. Well, I never met her. And that was that. And it took another 20 plus years until I was 39 before I met her. And even then, I didn't realize that it was her in Covent Garden. I didn't forget the scene. She never forgot the scene. At the time, I was teaching meditation. I was in a little village, and being holistic like I am, I'd started a meditation group up, and she started coming. And immediately that she started coming, there was a rapport, there was a draw to her. But I wasn't sure what it was. It wasn't initially romantic. There was a connection with the eyes that I could actually see really deep into her, and she could see really deeply into me. And being somebody that is very spiritually aware and can see auras, etc., I could feel the gaze going right deep into my soul, and I'm sure she could feel the same. So it was almost like you were sat there naked in every sense of the word. And we started talking, and she was flirting with me, and I thought, well, this is a no-go. She's married. I don't know what's going on here. We started getting intimate, and I know that this is a bit of a sin to get involved with a married woman, but it was something that we couldn't stop ourselves. The years to each other, not just spiritually, but actually intimately in the physical body, was so strong, something that I'd never in life. So we started a relationship. It was about 2 or 3 years into the relationship that we actually relayed that we'd actually met each other in Covent Garden. She said something, and then I said something, and yes, you went to speak to the viola player. And she said, how do you know? I said, because I was there. She said, I saw this man stood at the balcony. I said, yes, that was me. He was wearing a leather jacket and a green shirt. She said, absolutely. And we suddenly realized that actually we had met each other 20 plus years before, but never spoke. And this is one of the signatures that actually initialized, and we both went, hang on a minute, there's something going on here. Another signature that actually we realized was the fact that she grew up and she hated signet rings. I have a signet ring. She hated the name John. My name is John. She hated Ford cars. I drove a Ford car. So, I mean, it was always a case of, the things she hated were the things that I had, the complete opposite. Just like I said, twin flames are opposite. And when I was younger, I always knew that I'd meet somebody with piercing green eyes, and brown wavy hair that would be slightly older than me. She was 18 months older than me. Then when we met, just soon after we met and we started going out, which was tricky, I had a premonition. And I'm somebody that does have premonitions every now and again, not regularly, but every now and again, and they come true. And it sent me into an absolute spin, this premonition, because this premonition said that I had met my twin flame, or whatever they said was a twin flame, and that I would get exceedingly hurt. They would get exceedingly hurt. I would have a short affair. I would go away with the affair. I would come back and be forgiven. And then I would have to leave my twin flame for 30 years, at which time I would then get married. And then when I was in my 80s, I would then come back and re-meet my twin flame. So that got me very emotional when I relayed this vision, and neither of us really believed it. And it is exactly what's happened, but I'll come back to that in a minute. So we talked about these things, and then she said, I can remember being in the womb. And I went, really? So I wasn't so sure. I'm a hypnotist. I do regressions. So I regressed her and recorded the conversation while she was in regression. And I took her right back to in the womb of her mother. And yes, she was with a physical twin that was male in the womb. And when she talked to her mother about it, her mother admitted, yes, her other child had basically miscarried. And the person that was my twin flame had remained in the womb, but the other child, a boy, was miscarried reasonably late on. She relayed this to me, my twin, and I went, oh my God, because I had had an image in the past of me being with someone in the womb, me curled up around them, sucking my thumb. And I never understood what this was because I was never with a physical twin in my mother's tummy. So by doing the calculations, I worked out that I'd literally been in her mother's tummy, gone up, had 9 months, come down, and had the gestation of 9 months, and then was born. And I always felt that, I'd gone up, come down, flipping quick. I'd not had a space really to take note, to breathe, to actually understand what had happened. And this made a lot of sense. And it also made a lot of sense when I was a child, as going, well, where are they? So these are the things that connected us together, where we actually went, well, there's no doubt. We've got to be twin flames. And this is a soul contract that we've actually got to connect and move forwards with. So this is the second phase of the twin flame. So the first stage of the twin flame is the yearning. The second stage of the twin flame is the awakening and the meeting of the twin flame and actually realizing that that is your twin flame. The third stage is the connection. And the connection is not just understanding that you're with your twin, but it's actually getting to know each other, the similarities, and the polar differences. And believe me, there are an awful lot of polar differences because it's about the mirroring, which helps you understand yourself and progress emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, etc. There was one hell of a lot of differences. The arguments we have, the pain that we had, the way that we actually had that, heartache is all you can really say. And the karmic paths that were so different as well. I'd always been a bachelor. She'd got married young. She'd had children. I'd always wanted children. I couldn't have children because of my biology. She was very career orientated. I was very spiritual orientated. She was emotionally secure. I got brought up with narcissists. I wasn't emotionally secure. And I was an empath that was trying my best to actually keep the peace from childhood upwards. So we went through the fourth stage, which is the honeymoon period, where this is a period of bliss and completely starstruck of going backwards and forwards to different places, can say nothing but love and picking flowers for each other, painting pictures, doing poetry. And it was like something out of a romance novel, Romeo and Juliet, absolutely. So we went through that. And after the next stage was the crisis point. So we're talking about a relationship that spanned 10 years. And I believe 10 years is, you know, good going, really, because there's so much emotion, so much deep spiritual ties to unconnect, to reconnect, to understand about each other. And although she had actually been in my meditation classes for a little while, this was new. She was an entrepreneur, and she was not somebody that actually really had delved into spirituality or religion in any way. So this was new for her, an awakening for her in that way. Whereas I'd gone on my spiritual path and my spiritual journey right back in my 20s, actually soon after I'd had that experience with her in Covent Garden. So you can see already, you know, how things were tying up. Also, you know, I would have a point of view that was very out of body and more in the universe, and she would have a point of view that was very grounded. If anything, I was like a balloon, and she was desperately trying to grab onto the strings to keep me down. So those were the two opposites. Being a Libra as well, I'm very out of balance, and she was always trying to keep me back in balance. So, what was the major crisis? Well, the major crisis um, really happened during COVID. Yes, there was a lot of hurt for me, really bad hurt and heartache prior to COVID, mainly because she was married. And, you know, I felt used. I felt like the cherry on the cake. She never had time for me. She'd never tell me when we were going to next meet. I never knew where, when, whatever. She'd almost keep me hanging on. And this was devastating for me because I absolutely, completely loved her. And, you know, to the love that I knew at that time. And there was a heart-wrenching pull towards her, and the fact that she wouldn't contact me, I never knew when I was going to see her again. I felt used and abused. She would take, and I'm a giver. And you know, it was part of my learning to actually understand what are my boundaries, for starters, but also not just to keep giving all the time to somebody that's taking. That, you know, you need to look after yourself as well. And that was one of the major learnings that I had to learn here, that, you know, compassion has to start with oneself, because if you don't love yourself, how possibly can you have any reserves in the pot to love somebody else?
Yeah.
So
Well, I just want to interject real quickly, and for the community watching, I really appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable, John, because I think, you know, our gifts are in our stories, and we share, and I think that's really beautiful. So thank you. And also, you're absolutely right, is you know, you have to move through really interesting, right, situations, whatever that looks like, so that way we can learn how to love ourselves. I believe that's been my experience, right,
of
is
course.
to move through suffering so that you can experience a deeper knowing of yourself, to then create those boundaries and take better care of your own spirit. So
Mm,
thank
mm,
you really for sharing. I appreciate it.
hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I kind of felt, to add to it, that a lot of the times people look for the love outside where it starts from within. You kind of like, and this is why a lot of people are going after material things, thinking that they're gonna make them happy when they're happy by default. They have all the love and everything inside, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I also like so far how you're not only telling the story, but you're also telling the lessons learned from the story. Not only like, here's the story how it go, but like what you actually found out through the whole process and how that changed you and the way you are now. So
Thank
it's
you.
wonderful.
Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the things, being a product of two narcissistic parents, that I learned through my emotional and psychological patterning was, if I love you, you will love me. I had nothing of unconditional love, and I was desperate for love. And actually, one of the things that I'm very grateful for my twin flame is they taught me that that's not how it works. That you need to love
Mm.
yourself, and in through loving yourself, then you can appreciate love from somebody else. And you won't find unconditional love from someone else if you're on the remit of, if I love you, you will love me, because that's totally conditional. So what you will attract will be conditional every time. So this is one of the big learning points that I had And this with the crisis, which is the fifth point of a twin flame of the journey, which is the conflict. So we came to COVID. During COVID, she shut me out completely. She didn't text me. She didn't anything. My parents are both split, and my dad lives in Spain, and I've been living with my mother to support her, basically because financially we can't live independently. It's just too tough in Britain to raise the amount of money you need to rent a property. So COVID came and my dad was visiting, and all of a sudden we had lockdown and my dad was stuck with us. So from two parents, they're very volatile with each other and always had been, we've now got a situation in COVID where my father is living downstairs in the sitting room, my mother is living upstairs in her bedroom and refuses to go out, and I'm trying to go to work and actually take food to homeless people and people that are in hospitals and people at the doors that can't get out, to help with the COVID crisis. And every day that I came in, it was like walking into a battle zone. So this was the situation I was in, and my twin flame didn't talk to me. There was no WhatsApp communication, there was no phone calls. Of course, we couldn't meet each other because it was a lockdown. And I felt absolutely and utterly abandoned. And it was at this time that I started going onto the internet and gaming on my phone. It's not something that I usually do. I'm not somebody that engages with gaming, social media, or anything like that. Never actually had the inclination to do it. But during COVID, it was a way of getting out of oneself, I suppose, into a different world, because actually the physical world was too heavy that you were experiencing at the time. And I met a group of people that were international that were playing the same game as me, and we joined on Discord and started having a chat. And I came across this one female in Germany that we started developing a rapport. Very, very different to me, a teacher in Germany, a scientist, not an artist like I'd been brought up with, so very different. And we supported each other. She was in a difficult marriage, and she was locked down in a difficult situation like I was. And we just started talking. And over time, this talking during COVID developed into a lot of flirting and some kind of rapport. And it got to the point where actually I could energetically feel her and she could energetically feel me, even though we hadn't spoke and we weren't on the phone together. So the synergy started forming. And this is a soulmate, which is different. So what happened is, as COVID lockdown ended in 2020 towards the August, I booked a flight to go and see my German. So she had told me that I would probably only ever see her once, and this was a weekend in Hanover. And so I flew to Hanover. Suffice to say, I didn't see much of Hanover itself, just the hotel. But it was the most amazing connection I've ever had in my life, up to this point. And it showed me absolutely unconditional love. And it showed love that was not only universal and spiritual love, but it showed me physical intimacy that was really, really unconditional too, instead of a conditional bedroom scenario. And this was a crisis point as far as my twin flame connection was concerned, liberation as far as my understanding of unconditional love and relation. So I'd now gone from a twin flame that was very opposite to me, that I felt used and abused, to a fling where everything was unconditional, including the intimacy. And I felt amazing, even though I was absolutely gutted that I knew I would never, ever see her again. I come back to England really in a mess, because I've got the two things happening. I've got the twin flame, I've got the soulmate that was the German, knowing I'd never be able to see the soulmate again. And then after COVID, my twin flame talks to me, and I'm up front, straight to the line, and I say, this is what's happened. She got devastated and got hurt, and it produced a real crisis point. And while I tried to explain why and what and how I'd felt rejected by her, her response was, well, I never knew this was your situation. How could you do this to me? La, la, la. Well, if she'd have been in communication with me, she would have known that my situation in COVID wasn't very good. And she was basically throwing back a mirror on me of somebody that had a really good COVID in comparison to me. Has she ever got over this? Absolutely not. The fact that I've stayed in what I know I'm never going to see them again was a real crisis point through the next few years. So this is, and we were rocking through this until about 2022. This was always being brought up. We couldn't go beyond this as far as my other twin was concerned. It was a real bad point. And there was no forgiveness. It was the sin above all sins as far as she was aware. Point. So along with number 5, the conflict, the 6, which is the runner, also in motion. So the runner and the chaser works often between people. One runs, one chases, then the other runs, then the other chases. And it's off and on, and it's to do with the egos and the philosophies and the dynamics of the spirit have been going on for 5 years already. And of course, when the crisis point hit, of course, she was the runner and I was the chaser. And then when I realized she didn't understand me, I was the runner, she was the chaser. But she wasn't so keen as the chaser. Even though she wanted the relationship to continue, she also felt decidedly hurt and couldn't understand why I had ever gone away. And the reason I'd was not just because she'd left me during, because I had increasingly become aware through the hurt that I'd experienced that I literally was just a cherry on the cake. And, you know, what she'd reflected to me was the dynamic of if I love you, you love me, which is what I'd put out into the universe. She hadn't reflected back unconditional love, and always she'd picked holes in me for this, for that, for something else. Because the other reflection, of course, was the fact that I'd had 2 narcissistic parents. She had shadow narcissistic personality, of which she always put back on me. Of course she would. And, you know, this was the dynamic. So now we fast track to 2022 and the split. And what happened was she suddenly invited me to go away with her when she was doing a course in Spitalfields in London and to stay in the hotel. And as a business person, I work only really from my laptop, so I can be any still work. So I said, yeah, okay then. And this is the first time we've been away together since just after 2020, when we'd had the thing happen with the German. It was beautiful. And although we had a couple of arguments, it was sorted through very adult mannerism, both reflecting on the emotional aspect, the psychological aspect, and what the person was learning from it on both sides, and taking into consideration all dynamics, which was incredibly mature. And I felt, you know, this situation that we'd had when we'd had a little tussle really was a mountain that we'd climbed, that actually we'd got somewhere, that actually we were developing a deeper relationship, something that was surmounting the runner chaser, surmounting the conflict and the crisis. However, after we'd stayed the 6 days together, which I thought was absolutely beautiful, she suddenly went, no, I can't do this again, I can't see you. And so this then brought up that, well, why? I thought we were getting to the point of unconditional love. Why have you suddenly rejected me? And she just went, well, I can't take this anymore. I can't take this dynamic anymore. And I can't take the situation of what happened with the German. That came back into the mix again. So that was that. And we didn't see each other. So we met each other a couple of times for coffee. And the last time was really the end of 2023. At this point, I just knew that nothing left, and got to the 7th stage, which is surrendering your ego. and actually realizing that you've got to this point, there's nothing really to cling on to, and you are who you are. That's it. And you've had your experience grateful for, and you realize the differences between you. There's no more clinging on into the desire. And although the magnetism is unbelievable, don't get me wrong. I mean, every time I've seen her face to face, the pull to actually kiss her is phenomenal. I've never known. It's like two magnets drawing you in, and it's almost unstoppable. And that's why I met her in person. I'd be in trouble. It's but it was the surrender. It was the acknowledgement that we'd got to a point where we weren't going any further, and we appreciated our journey thus far. So we now go to what was happening on in the back scenes with me. So while this was all going on from 2022, I had met somebody else online, and it was a friendship. They were in South Africa, and I was here in the UK. We'd never met each other, and we were having a lot of jollies, a lot of laughs. We could talk to each other about absolutely everything, even the twin thing, and it was great. And we got really close. In November, I booked a ticket to go to South Africa. I basically said, well, what the fuck? Let's excuse me for my language. Let's meet up.
I say it all the time.
And there just happened to be a ticket to South Africa for under £500, and that's unheard of. Seeing return tickets from the UK to South Africa are usually 1,000 plus. So I booked it, and I went, well, seriously, the universe is saying something here. And I went in February for 2 weeks. Well, I ended up staying for 7. Why? Because I got a spider bite, and then as soon as I recovered from the spider bite, I got bronchial pneumonia. Was this spiritual guided? Oh, of course it was. Did they want me to stay with this woman for longer to get to know her? Of course they did. And what happened was she ended up being my soulmate. And she ended up being the soulmate in the story of the premonition that I would meet later, that I would marry when I would finally return to my twin flame when she dies. So at the moment, I'm in the situation where I'm getting married in January to my beautiful soulmate in South Africa, and the journey continues. And the last stage, of course, is the union. When you re-meet your twin flame after you've done everything that you need to do, you're both complete as spiritual entities, and you go to heaven or the universe, having completed the whole of your journey as twin flames, and then you can move on to enlightenment. So what a hell of a journey. And all I can say is absolute wow, golly gosh, and the learnings and the conflict and the roller coaster. I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't had this twin flame experience of 10 years. Do I regret some of it? Oh yes, some of it. I wish I'd have held my mouth shut to save her some hurt. But on the other hand, she hurt me really, really badly. And while one hurt doesn't deserve another hurt, I think, naturally in a twin flame situation, this is going to happen, whatever. It's not a case if you mean to, it's going to happen. What have I learned about relationships and love? I've learned a hell of a lot. So I've learned about lust and desire, which is more carnal, which is an attraction. This is an animalistic attraction built on the physicality of three. I've learned about twin flame attraction, which is a contract attraction, which is beyond the human physical self. It's something that's in the universe, that's in our higher self, that's destined because we are going on a journey of enlightenment. And I've learned about soulmates. Have you got more than one soulmate? Absolutely. Do you rotate in your lives and your reincarnations of soulmates? Absolutely. Are they there to support you, to love you, to guide you, and to keep you going? Absolutely. Not every single soulmate will be your lover, but they are there for you. And you have a connection with them that is different to connections with everyday folk. Is there value in every single type of relationship and type of love? Absolutely. Is it important for you to understand the different types? Yes, I think it is. Move forwards in an understanding of you, an understanding of what love is, and what love is in the 3D and in the universal and spiritual context. Right now, as we are in 2024, I think so. There is a lot of aggravation, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of love which is conditional. And I feel that actually, if we had understand these experiences subjectively, there would be a lot more love and understanding across the world. And this is something that really I want to say about this story is that whatever love we go through, it is always worth us understanding, stepping back from it, viewing it, feeling it, emotionally feeling it as well as spiritually feeling it, and understanding what are we going through. Are we going through things for our higher self? Are we going through things for our emotional healing? Is this our soul connection? And are we going through it because they are soul mates? And what is the run through of this relationship? What do we need to learn? And what do the other person need to learn? And where exactly is it? There is absolutely no relationship that we go through that is cut and dry, black and white. The complications involved, because it does involve our heart and emotions as well, are incredible. But it does take mindfulness and reflection to understand this. And I think this is the bit of nugget that I want to say to you all is that actually just take a moment and really consider your journey and really consider your learning around love and relationships. What do you still need to
You
learn?
know,
What have you learned? Go ahead,
so
Kay.
something you said earlier that really struck me that I wanted to highlight and kind of call attention to, and then it ties into what you're just saying now is, when you were sharing your story about uh, becoming intimate and having this relationship with a married woman, you suggested sin, which I truly don't believe that there's sin. I'm going to be honest. I think that that is an idea that comes from ego, but I do believe that we experience whatever it is we go through for growth and expansion and connection to teach us about unconditional love. And then you circle back toward the end and you say, to kind of step back and observe what's happening. And I totally agree with that. And it really aligns with my philosophy of always coming from a place of curiosity and non-judgment, because in a place of non-judgment, I can really observe my interactions and whatever relationships I'm having and take away insight and learning. But the minute I judge that experience, right, judge whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, whatever it is, now I lose my personal ability to learn from it, because the way in which I operate, I immediately go back to shame and guilt, two emotions that don't ever serve me, but that have been embedded into my psyche. Much like the experience you've had, I grew up with people who I wouldn't know if I don't call people narcissistic, but I know they had their own emotional mental health journeys that they were, navigating. And as a result, it embedded and imprinted these specific ways of showing up and feeling in the world. So, for the community who's heard this story, I think it's really beautiful, and I would encourage you to maybe look at the whole journey from a place of curiosity and how John has been able to really experience love in different phases of his life, rather than whether there's a right or wrong, because that's so subjective. Like, what is right or wrong, we don't know. All I know is if my heart calls me to something, I'm going to lean into it. And I truly believe me and Yanko are soulmates. We're not intimate and we're not lovers, but he's like one of my people, and I have no problem sharing that with my lover and my like children stuff, because that's just what it is. And I don't judge it. It just is what it is, you know? So that's kind of my take. And I really do appreciate you sharing with the community this story of your unfolding and learning. And I mean, I just feel honored to been able to be part of your sharing. So thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. First of all, I don't think I did say that being with a married woman was, some people might consider it as such, and that is up to you. Um, Secondly, soulmates don't have to be lovers. We are reincarnated regularly with our soul family as support. I know that my father has reincarnated with me regularly, and there was an occasion way back many lives ago when he was my brother and I killed him. So I am very aware of how souls reincarnate with each other for support and for karmic patterning and karmic reasoning. Do I think that actually going was a so? Because it takes two to tango, and seriously, if they didn't want it, it wouldn't have happened, would it? So there was no force involved from my side or from their side. It's just society and, yes, religion that classifies certain things with stigma. So yeah, don't take it that I'm judgmental on these things. Things happen for a reason, and things are seriously go with the flow without judging oneself or judging the others. Because if you actually judge yourself, you're stopping yourself from actually being able to step back and view with clarity. And sometimes we do this, have been programmed religion by other things that have happened to us, and we beat ourselves up. And as Kerry says, we do have guilt and we do have remorse when sometimes we don't need to. We need to actually be less harsh and actually realize what is the universe teaching. Religion is a part of spirituality, but in my ideal and how I feel, it isn't spirituality. It's just a guide to spirituality. And further to be ourselves and be who we are within our belief, within the universe, within our own personal spirituality.
Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation, or more less of a conversation, but you showing up and sharing, which I'm just as honored and grateful for. Yanko, do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off for this week?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's wonderful. I had a couple of things that crossed my mind when I was listening to the story. It's kind of like he you do realize that the character you're playing, because you're already getting those bits of where this is gonna go and everything, and you still play the role that you're supposed to play, and you're kind of having a fun with it. Am I getting this right? Or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I might
yeah,
have a premonition that gives
so
me that gives me some of the story, but it's only in hindsight that you can really put the jigsaw pieces exactly together. I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Yeah, I mean, premonitions happen; they give you an indication, don't they? But I mean, they don't give you the whole flipping story. And while it can shock you, and you go, "I really don't want this," what happens? And after that is you forget it, and only when the thing happens, you go, "Oh my goodness." I remember this. Now, how do I remember this? And then you piece another jigsaw piece together. And I am looking forward to this next part of my life. I found my soulmate. She's absolutely beautiful. She's absolutely amazing. I'm going to start a new life in South Africa, and I know that I'm going to be with her until I'm in my 80s. If my twin comes back, and that's an if, because it takes two people, then it will end the circuit. If it doesn't happen, do I mind? Absolutely not. I've had a good 30 years with my soulmate that in South Africa that I couldn't be happier with.
wonderful. And the other thing I was gonna say is that when you share that physical, intimate, and everything, and that's my personal experience and thought is that we're here to master the lower first chakras here and the 3D, like the surviving, the sexual desire, the control, all those things, and everything just kind of plays out. We agree with that or
Absolutely.
disagree?
Well, I mean, if you look at it spiritually, it's, it kind of follows the same psychological pattern as Maslow's triangle of needs. So, I mean, it's all there. And the understanding, I mean, you will rise up through your understanding, you will drop back down again, and it's about going around in a cycle until you really do embed the learning lesson. And that is part of life. I mean, we go through life, we learn something, or we think we have, and then we repeat it again because it hasn't really embedded into our psyche. So we have to go through it again. And this is what life is about. And life, sometimes you need to step back and just laugh at it, because really it's quite ridiculous how it comes round and smacks you around the face again.
All the time. So real. Well, with that, we are going to sign off for this week's episode of For No Particular Reason. As I mentioned, offline, John and I believe I attest for Yanko as well. You were certainly welcome to join us whenever Spirit calls you to share some insight or just another great story, because this has been beautiful and a gift to myself as well as the community. So with that, I bid all of you goodbye. Yanko, any parting words for the community?
Thank you all for sharing the moment with us on this beautiful Friday, and we look forward to joining you again.
Thank you very much for having me. Namaste. And it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope all the viewers have enjoyed this episode.